She said it was just a work trip, but I followed her and saw everything. The leather steering wheel was slick with sweat beneath my palms as I watched Sarah's silver Lexus pull into the parking lot of the Grandview Hotel. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a painful reminder that I was about to discover something that would either destroy my marriage or prove that I was the most paranoid husband in Chicago. She had kissed me goodbye that morning with the same soft lips that had whispered, "I love you" every night for the past 12 years. Her perfume, vanilla and jasmine, still lingered in my car, a ghost of the woman I thought I knew. The conference badge she'd forgotten on the kitchen counter sat in my passenger seat, mocking me with its lies. There was no medical equipment conference at the Grandview. I'd checked, twice. I shouldn't have been there, crouched low in my BMW 3 rows back, watching my wife of 15 years through tinted windows. But the late nights, the whispered phone calls, the new lingerie hidden in the back of her drawer, they all led me here to this moment of terrible clarity. Sarah stepped out of her car wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. The one she said made her feel beautiful. My chest tightened. She never wore that dress to work conferences. Her heels clicked against the asphalt as she walked toward the hotel entrance, and I noticed she was carrying the small overnight bag I'd given her for Christmas, the one with our initials embroidered in gold thread. I waited 5 minutes before following my legs, feeling like lead as I crossed the parking lot. The automatic doors whooshed open, welcoming me into a lobby that smelled of fresh flowers and expensive coffee. Sarah was nowhere to be seen, but I caught a glimpse of her at the elevator bank pressing the button for the 7th floor. My phone buzzed. A text from her, "Made it to Cleveland safely. Conference registration was crazy, love you." Cleveland. She was supposed to be in Cleveland. The lie hit me like a physical blow, and I had to grab the back of a lobby chair to steady myself. An elderly woman asked if I was all right, and I managed to nod, forcing a smile that felt like shattered glass on my face. I took the stairs, needing the physical exertion to keep my mind from spinning into complete chaos. By the time I reached the 7th floor, my shirt was damp with perspiration and my breathing was ragged. The hallway stretched before me like a tunnel, each door a potential answer to questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Then I heard her laugh. That beautiful musical laugh that had first caught my attention at a mutual friend's barbecue all those years ago. It was coming from room 712, and it was followed by a man's voice, deep and unfamiliar. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart now beating so hard I was sure they could hear it through the door. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to go home and pretend this never happened. To preserve the illusion of our perfect life, the house in the suburbs, the plans for children. We'd been trying for the vacation to Italy we'd booked for next summer, but I couldn't move. I was frozen there, a man watching his life unravel through a hotel room door. The voices grew quieter, and then I heard something that made my blood run cold, the distinctive sound of a champagne cork popping. They were celebrating something. I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I found myself walking to the door and raising my hand to knock. Time seemed to slow as my knuckles approached the wood. This was it, the moment everything would change. But then the door opened before I could knock. It wasn't Sarah who stood there. It was a man I'd never seen before, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a hotel bathrobe. His face went from confused to alarmed as he took in my appearance. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. I looked past him into the room, and what I saw there made me question everything I thought I knew about my wife, my marriage, and myself. Sarah was there, but she wasn't alone. The room was full of people, at least a dozen, all wearing matching t-shirts with a logo I didn't recognize. Laptops were set up on every surface, and the walls were covered with charts and graphs. A banner hung across the window, "Project Phoenix Phase 1 complete." Sarah's eyes met mine across the room, and I saw them widen in shock. She was wearing the same black dress, but over it was one of those matching t-shirts. In her hand was a champagne glass raised in mid-toast. "David." Her voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" The room fell silent. Every face turned to stare at me, the intruder, the husband who had followed his wife, convinced of an affair that didn't exist. Or did it? Because this, whatever this was, felt like a betrayal of a different kind. "I could ask you the same thing." I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. "You're supposed to be in Cleveland." Sarah set down her champagne glass with shaking hands. "Everyone, could you give us a moment?" The room emptied quickly, people filing past me with curious glances and whispered conversations. The man in the bathrobe, who I now noticed was wearing the same t-shirt underneath, was the last to leave, closing the door behind him with a soft click. We stood there, my wife and I separated by more than just the physical space of a hotel room. The silence stretched between us like an ocean. I can explain, she finally said. Can you? I asked. Because I've been trying to explain the late nights. The secret phone calls the lies about where you're going. I've been trying to explain why my wife of 15 years suddenly feels like a stranger. Sarah sank onto the bed, her perfect composure finally cracking. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been living a double life. She looked up at me and I saw tears forming in her eyes. You're right. I have been living a double life, but not the way you think. I waited, my anger and hurt warring with a desperate need to understand. 6 months ago, she began. I was approached by someone at the hospital. They knew about my research, my work in biomedical engineering. They offered me a chance to be part of something revolutionary, a project that could change the future of medicine. And you couldn't tell me this because I signed a non-disclosure agreement that specifically prohibited me from telling anyone, including family. The work we're doing, it's not just groundbreaking, David. It's potentially dangerous if it falls into the wrong hands. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. So you're what, some kind of secret agent now? No, she said firmly. I'm a scientist working on a classified project. The people you just saw, they're some of the brightest minds in the country. We've been working day and night to develop a new technology that could cure diseases we've never been able to touch before. And the man in the bathrobe? Sarah's face flushed. Dr. Marcus Chen. He's the project lead. He was in the bathrobe because he spilled coffee all over himself during our presentation. His clothes are at the dry cleaner downstairs. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But the months of deception had built a wall between us that felt insurmountable. Show me, I said. What? Show me what you've been working on. If it's really that important, if it's really worth lying to me for 6 months, then show me. Sarah stood up, wringing her hands. I can't. The NDA didn't stop you from meeting in a hotel instead of a secure facility. It didn't stop you from leaving your conference badge on the kitchen counter, the fake one, by the way. I know there's no medical equipment conference here. She winced. You're right. We've bent some rules. The hotel meetings were supposed to be more secure than the official facilities, less oversight, less chance of corporate espionage. But I can't show you the actual work. I could lose everything. You're already losing everything, I said quietly. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Sarah's face crumpled, and for the first time in months, I saw my wife not the stranger she'd become, but the woman I'd fallen in love with. I never wanted this, she whispered. I thought I could keep both parts of my life separate. I thought I was protecting you. From what? From the pressure, the danger, the ethical implications of what we're doing. We're not just curing diseases, David. We're talking about changing human biology at a fundamental level. The debates we have, they keep me up at night. How far is too far? When does healing become enhancement? What right do we have to play God? I moved closer to her, drawn by the anguish in her voice. And you didn't think I could handle those conversations? We've been partners for 15 years, Sarah. We've faced everything together. I know, she said, tears now flowing freely. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I told myself it was temporary, that the project would be over soon, and I could tell you everything. But it just kept growing, becoming more complex, more important. And more consuming, I added. She nodded. I've been a terrible wife. I've been so focused on the work, on the potential to save lives, that I forgot about the life I already had. The life with you. I sat down beside her on the bed, careful not to touch her. I wasn't ready for that yet. What happens now? I don't know, she admitted. The project is at a crucial stage. We're about to begin human trials. If I leave now, years of work could be wasted. But if I've already lost you, you haven't lost me, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. But you've damaged us. The trust, the connection, it's going to take time to rebuild that. If you're willing to try, she said hopefully. I thought about the future we'd planned together, the children we wanted, the life we'd been building. Then, I thought about the woman sitting beside me, brilliant, driven, flawed, and still, despite everything, the person I wanted to grow old with. I need to know everything, I said. Not the classified details, but everything else. The late nights where you've really been who you've been with. No more lies, no more secrets. I can do that, she said quickly. I'll tell you everything I can. And I need to meet your team. Not as your husband, but as someone who exists in your life. I won't be a ghost in my own marriage anymore. Sarah nodded, reaching for my hand. I let her take it, feeling the familiar warmth of her touch. There's something else, she said hesitantly. The project it's connected to, why we've been having trouble conceiving. I stiffened. We'd been trying for 2 years, going through test after test, all coming back normal. What do you mean? The technology we're developing, I've been exposed to certain elements of it. It's completely safe, she added quickly, seeing my alarm. But it's changed my biology in subtle ways. The doctors on the team think it might be affecting my fertility. And you didn't think this was something I should know? The anger was back hot and sharp. I only found out 2 weeks ago. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you without revealing the project. I know how much you want children. No, we want children, I corrected. We, not just me. No, we want children, she agreed. And the team thinks the effects are reversible. Once the project is complete and I'm no longer exposed to the technology, everything should return to normal. Should, I repeated, but you don't know for sure. No, she admitted. We don't know for sure. I stood up, needing to move to process everything I'd learned. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights, beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Somewhere out there was the life I'd thought I had, simple, predictable, built on trust and love. But that life had been an illusion, hadn't it? My wife had been living a double life, and I'd been too blind or too trusting to see it. I followed you here thinking you were having an affair, I said, still facing the window. I was prepared for that kind of betrayal. But this is something else entirely. You didn't just lie about where you were going. You lied about who you are. No, Sarah said firmly. I'm still me. I'm still the woman who loves terrible reality TV and cries at dog food commercials. I'm still the person who steals all the covers and can't function without coffee. I'm also someone trying to change the world. At what cost? I asked, turning to face her. I don't know, she said honestly. That's what I'm trying to figure out. A knock at the door interrupted us. Sarah answered it, and Dr. Chen stood there now, properly dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said, glancing between us. But we need to make a decision about the Morgan proposal. The deadline is in an hour. Sarah looked at me, torn between her two worlds once again. Go, I said. Make your decision. But when you're done, we're going home, together. And we're going to talk, really talk, for the first time in months. So you're not leaving? She asked, hope brightening her features. No, I said. I'm not leaving. But things are going to change. The secrecy, the lies, they end now. If you're going to save the world, you're not going to lose your marriage in the process. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. If I may, Sarah is one of the most brilliant scientists I've ever worked with. But she's also talked about you constantly. Your opinion matters to her more than you know. Perhaps it's time we brought you into the fold, so to speak. Not the classified work, but as someone who understands what we're trying to achieve. I looked at him, this stranger who knew more about my wife's daily life than I did. I'll think about it. He nodded and retreated, leaving us alone again. Sarah came to stand beside me at the window. I know I have no right to ask, but will you wait for me? Just an hour, and then we can go home and start fixing this. I thought about the man I'd been that morning. Suspicious, paranoid, convinced my wife was cheating. In a way, she had been. She'd been cheating me out of the truth, out of the partnership we'd promised each other. But she'd also been trying to do something extraordinary, something that could help millions of people. I'll wait, I said. But Sarah, no more lies. Not even small ones. If we're going to make this work, I need to know that the person I'm married to is real, not just another cover story. I promise, she said, and for the first time in months I believed her. She kissed me on the cheek, a tentative, careful gesture, and then went to join her team. I heard their voices resume in the hallway, discussing things I didn't understand, but that clearly meant everything to them. I sat down on the bed in the exact spot where my wife had sat moments before and tried to make sense of what had just happened. I'd come here expecting to catch her in an affair, ready to confront the ultimate betrayal. Instead, I'd discovered something far more complex, a woman struggling to balance world-changing work with personal relationships, failing at both and succeeding at neither. The next hour passed slowly. I could hear muffled conversations from the rooms nearby, the occasional burst of laughter or heated debate. These were the sounds of my wife's other life, the one I'd been excluded from. Part of me wondered if I wanted to be included, if I could handle knowing that my spouse was involved in something so significant and so secret. When Sarah finally returned, she looked exhausted, but somehow lighter, as if sharing the truth had lifted a physical weight from her shoulders. Ready to go home? She asked. Ready, I said. We gathered her things in silence, the laptop covered in stickers from conferences I now knew were fake. The files marked with code names that meant nothing to me, the coffee-stained notes that might hold the key to curing cancer, or might just be grocery lists. I realized I didn't know anymore. I didn't know what was real and what was cover. The drive home was quiet. We took separate cars, of course, but I could see Sarah's Lexus in my rearview mirror following me like I'd followed her. There was something poetic about that, I suppose, both of us trailing after each other, trying to find our way back to common ground. When we finally pulled into our driveway, the house looked exactly as it had that morning. The same blue shutters, the same garden gnomes Sarah's mother had given us, the same life waiting inside. But everything had changed. We sat at our kitchen table, the one we'd bought at a flea market during our first year of marriage, and Sarah began to talk. She told me about the recruitment, the initial excitement, the growing pressure. She explained the science in terms I could understand, painting a picture of a future where genetic diseases were eradicated, where cancer was prevented before it could begin, where the human body could repair itself in ways we'd only dreamed of. She also told me about the fear of failure, fear of success, fear of losing herself in the work. She admitted to the nights she'd sat in her car in the hospital parking lot, trying to find the courage to come home and tell me everything. She'd composed the confession 100 times in her head, but could never make the words come out. I became two different people, she said. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, revolutionary scientist, and Sarah Mitchell, wife and hopeful future mother. I thought I could keep them separate, but they kept bleeding into each other. The stress from work would come home with me. The guilt from lying to you would follow me to the lab. I was failing at both lives because I couldn't integrate them. So what do we do now? I asked. I don't know, she admitted, but I want to figure it out together, if you're willing. I reached across the table and took her hand. It was still the same hand I'd held during our wedding, the one that wore the ring I'd saved for months to buy. But now I knew it was also the hand that might be writing the future of human medicine. I will figure it out, I said, but it's going to take time and work and probably therapy. Sarah laughed, a watery sound, but genuine. I know a good therapist. She has security clearance. Of course she does, I said, and found myself smiling for the first time in hours. We talked until the sun came up, covering everything from the practical how to handle future work trips to the philosophical, the ethics of human enhancement. By the time exhaustion finally drove us to bed, we'd established new ground rules for our marriage transparency, where possible honesty always, and a commitment to facing the future together, whatever it might hold. As I lay beside my wife, watching the morning light filter through our bedroom curtains, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. I'd started the day as a suspicious husband, convinced I was about to uncover an affair. Instead, I'd discovered something far more complex, a marriage that had been tested by extraordinary circumstances and had bent almost to breaking but hadn't shattered. Sarah mumbled something in her sleep and curled closer to me, her hand finding mine even in unconsciousness. It was such a familiar gesture, one I'd taken for granted for years. Now I knew that even the familiar could hide profound secrets. The truth was, I didn't know what the future held for us. The project Sarah was working on would continue to demand her time and energy. There would be more late nights, more conferences, real ones she'd promised. More moments when she'd have to choose between her two lives. And we still had to face the possibility that her work had permanently affected our ability to have children. But we'd face it together. No more secrets, no more lies, no more parallel lives that never intersected. Just two people, flawed and complicated, trying to build something lasting in a world that seemed determined to pull them apart. I thought about the man I'd been 12 hours ago, sitting in that parking lot, convinced my world was about to end. In a way, it had. The simple, uncomplicated marriage I'd thought I had was gone forever. But in its place was something more real, more honest, and ultimately more valuable, a partnership that could withstand truth, no matter how difficult. Sarah stood beside me, her eyes fluttering open. "You're still here?" she said, as if she couldn't quite believe it. "Still here," I confirmed, "and I'm not going anywhere. Even though I'm a terrible wife who's been living a double life, even though you're a brilliant scientist who's trying to save the world and made some questionable choices about how to balance that with your personal life," I corrected. She smiled, that radiant smile that had first caught my attention all those years ago. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," I replied. "Both versions of you." And as we lay there holding each other in the morning light, I realized that sometimes the most profound betrayals could lead to the deepest understanding. We'd been broken, but like the human body Sarah was working to improve, we had the capacity to heal, to grow stronger at the broken places. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead that I couldn't even imagine. But for the first time in months, I felt hope not just for our marriage, but for the world my wife was helping to create. A world where secrets might be necessary, but didn't have to destroy the bonds between people. A world where love could coexist with ambition, where trust could be rebuilt after betrayal, where two people could find their way back to each other across any distance. I closed my eyes, pulling Sarah closer, and let myself drift off to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new secrets to navigate, new truths to discover. But for now, in this moment, we were just us, flawed, human, and together. And that was enough. Outside our window, the world went on spinning, full of people, living their own double lives, keeping their own secrets, struggling to balance who they were with who they needed to be. But inside our small house with its blue shutters and garden gnomes, two people had found their way back to honesty, back to trust, back to each other. It wasn't the ending I'd expected when I'd followed my wife to that hotel, but it was the ending we needed, not a conclusion, but a new beginning. A chance to rebuild something stronger and more authentic than what we'd had before. The work trip that wasn't a work trip had revealed everything, just not in the way I'd imagined. And in the end, that revelation, painful as it was, might have saved us both. As sleep finally claimed me, I thought I heard Sarah whisper something about quantum cellular regeneration. Or maybe she was just talking in her sleep about grocery shopping. I realized with a smile that I'd have to learn the difference. But that was okay. We had time. We had all the time in the world.